We're back. It's the Real Estate People Podcast, the podcast where we talk to people about real estate.
Seems so simple, and it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
But we're here to spread the knowledge and remind you that the only bad investment you could make in real estate is not investing in real estate. So we're here to break that down for you today.
All right. We're in the middle of a series right now about the home buying process. It can be confusing. There's lots of steps involved. And so we're just kind of cranking out each step of the process and diving a little bit deeper into those things. And today we're talking about the search. It's the most exciting thing, I think. A lot of people, when they think about buying a house, that's what they're thinking about, you know?
That search often starts online on some sort of consumer-facing platform. It used to start with the realtors, but then technology happened. So whether you're on Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, Redfin, wherever, like most people are looking online, which is a great place to start to understand values and concepts from afar. But really the meat and potatoes of this is being in these homes, like feeling that energy. How close is it between the neighbors? How much space is actually around this house? And that stuff you don't really understand and you don't really feel it until you're in there.
Yeah.
So looking at houses is fun. And when you're doing it with the right person and the right people, it's awesome.
Yeah, and we're going to help you think through the different things to think about when you're looking for a house, from your why all the way through actually finding the one. So we're excited to have that conversation.
Yeah, we're going to break this down all the way through offers, attorneys, underwriting deals from the lending perspective, inspections, and closing. So thank you for being on this journey with us. And let's dive right into our favorite part of real estate is helping people identify what they're looking for, the search.
Let's dive in.
Let's go.
Introducing Real Estate People.
Hey, where are the bills? What are you talking about, Willis?
We're the real estate people. People.
All right. So searching for a home could be a very rewarding or a painful experience, or not as rewarding.
Yeah, it could.
It could be painful depending on market conditions and a lot of other things.
Yeah, I always think that the most important thing is to like kind of get your ducks in a row before you start looking at houses. You know, a lot of people, they start looking at Zillow right away before they know what their budget is, before they know exactly what they need. You know, maybe they haven't really like done a lot of research in houses. Maybe they don't know some features that some houses have. And if you just start kind of willy-nilly going around looking at houses, you might look at 10, 15 houses before you really understand what you need, what you want, and what your budget can actually pay for,
right? What
the neighborhoods are like and all that. And so it doesn't hurt to get on Zillow because it's exciting. It's exciting to, especially after, you know, we've already talked about getting pre-approved and finding an agent, and you know, it feels like the ball is rolling. So you just want to get out there and start looking at houses. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you'll maximize your time and your agent's time and everyone's time. People are busy, right? They're going to work, they're juggling kids, they're doing all this stuff, and they're trying to look for houses. So let's like try to get you to a point where by the time you start actually looking at houses, you know what you want, you know why you want it.
Right.
You know?
A couple things coming to mind as you're talking about that important stuff. And one of them is the 5 Ps. Proper planning prevents poor performance. Like, do the work at the beginning so that you don't have to do that work throughout that entire process, and really identify what it is that you want. I often like relay this to, it's like going to the Cheesecake Factory when you're really hungry, right? There's so many awesome options. It's like, what am I going to choose from? But when you know what you want, the process is just going to be smoother because you've planned prior to performing.
That's very specific, the Cheesecake Factory. I always hear that phrase and they're talking about like grocery shopping, right? So like you don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry without a list. You got to like figure out what you need before you go there. Because if I go when I'm just hungry and I don't have a list, I'm going home with Doritos
fruit
and
by the foot,
like two 12 packs of Diet Pepsi and like
salt and vinegar and Doritos and pretzels.
Definitely Bison Dip is in there, like 3 buckets of ice cream, you know, just. And then my kids are hungry and I'm a neglectful father. Or they're just eating ice cream
so
for dinner.
those are the type of things we're trying to avoid when helping you navigate this process of buying a home.
Yeah.
Let's talk about at the beginning, like, because there's probably some people listening to this that are like, okay, like maybe I'm ready. I'm not sure if I'm actually ready. What are the most common reasons that we see where people are buying a house? Like, for what reason?
Yeah, and that actually gets to the core of the first question that I'll ask a client is, why are you moving? It's such a simple question, but it's so important to understand why. And it's important for the agent to know why too, because if we understand your motivation, we can help you find the thing that you actually need or want, you know? And we always say we're going to try to get you as many of your needs as we can. We're going to get you all of your needs and as many of your wants as possible. Right?
But that takes time to figure out what those needs and what those wants are. And oftentimes when buying a house, there's a few decision makers, you know, within that process too, whether that be husband and wife or, you know, partner and partner or kids involved, because it's important to them too, how they experience this home. So identifying the decision makers and the motivation of each of them and being on the same page as a family or as a unit will help you enjoy this process more.
Because nobody wants to be arguing with their partner or whatever while they're looking for a house too, right?
So sometimes that happens. And
it just adds to the stress of the whole thing.
That's when it could be like a daunting experience. Like, but when you're on the same page with your core decision, the decision-making unit within that transaction, it's going to be fun to go look at houses.
Yeah.
When you're both on the same page about what you want.
Right.
Or what everyone wants.
So you always start with why. And there's a lot of different reasons, but only a person who's looking for a house can actually answer the question, but it's worth thinking about. So some of the reasons people might move, maybe they bought the house when it was just them and their partner, and now they have a couple kids. Maybe they've outgrown the space, you know, as simple as that. Maybe they thought they wanted to live in the city and, you know, enjoy the walkability or the ease of access to restaurants and shops and whatever. And they just don't like all the noise. They don't like being on top of their neighbors, and they want a little more space.
Yeah, or you could be a first timer who's renting, and after a certain amount of time renting houses from people or apartments to live, you start to understand, well, maybe this isn't like the thing that's going to set me up for as much success as possible in life. So maybe it's time to buy a house.
Yeah, and life situations change too. Maybe one of your parents gets sick, and you want to be closer to them, you know, so that you can be just down the road so that you can take care of them. Or
you've raised your family, your kids are gone.
Yeah,
it's an empty nest. You don't need all this space anymore.
Right.
So whatever that motivation is, it's important to understand that so you can plan accordingly and be successful while doing it. And communicate that to the professionals involved so you know, we could help make sure that, you know, you're not buying something that you don't actually really want. Because if you do that, it could be very difficult, or it could be a financial drain if you close on something that isn't actually going to work for you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think answering that why question helps you to figure out what you need, right? A lot of times the reason you're moving is because you need a different situation. You need more bedrooms. You need more space. You need blank, whatever that is. And so we always start with why. Why are you moving? And then we get into what are your needs? What are the needs that have changed for you that is drawing you towards or leading you towards buying a house or moving, whatever that looks like.
Let's role play that for the listeners real quick. So I'm going to be a buyer's agent. You're a buyer.
Okay.
There's motivation. You've told me you're moving for whatever the case may be. And now the things that, and I want to break this down because it's not that complicated, and I want people to understand how it's just a conversation, right?
I can actually, this will be easy for me because I'm thinking about potentially moving at some point in the near future because of some reasons. So.
Okay. So first question I would ask you is, Erik, you're looking to buy a house, right? Why? I understand why you're moving. So the first thing is, like, do you have something to sell as well as something to purchase? Are you selling something to make this purchase?
Yeah. Well, my why is we've outgrown the space. We live in a city type environment. We had one kid when we moved in. Now we have 3 and a dog, you know? And so the yard is really small. I'm finishing my basement right now to make more room for my kid who's currently in my attic. He's got to go through my bedroom to get up to the attic, and that's where his bedroom is. It's finished. He's not like, you know, sleeping on a cobweb or anything, but I don't, you know, he's 9 years old. So to have him coming through our bedroom, It's just awkward for him, for us, everyone.
So it sounds like space is one of the drivers, and you mentioned the backyard too. So it's interior space and exterior space that's important to you.
Yeah.
So when thinking about space, like how much square feet do you have right now in your house?
I think on the tax record it's like 14 or 1500. But we do have that extra space. Our space is all vertical. We got the basement, we got the first floor, second floor, and then the attic. And we spend most of our time on the first floor. So even though we have probably close to 22 or 2,300 square feet total, it feels real small because we're always on the first floor together.
And some of that's in the basement and some of that's in the attic. When you talk about total, livable square feet in a sense.
Right.
But you really have 1,400 square feet on floors 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. So when thinking about this next purchase, how much square feet do you think your family needs to feel comfortable on floors 1 and 2?
I don't really care about bedroom size that much. It's more about kitchen and like the living room and outdoor space. Those are the most important things for me. And I'd love to have an attached garage too, because we live in Buffalo. We live in a tundra. It's snowing right now.
Are you actually going to park your car in that garage though? Everyone thinks they're going to. Then
I have big plans to
people's
do that.
houses and their garages are full of stuff.
It would be hard for me to keep it clean, because I got 3 kids and we got bikes and all that stuff. But
so it sounds like you need at least 2,000.
Yeah, that's
probably,
about right.
Like if you're talking 4 bedrooms and you want to have enough living space, you're probably going to be closer to something that's like 2,500 square feet. Mm-hmm. But in an effort not to miss a house that's 2,000 square feet but has a finished basement, let's start your search at like 2,000 square feet minimum. And I also want to set like a max to square feet because a lot of times the price of homes are determined by how big they are. So what is too much square feet that you don't want to maintain, that you don't want to like be a slave to cleaning this place or whatever comes with the responsibility of a big house?
I honestly don't know. I don't know. This is the first house that I have owned. And to be honest with you, I love it. I could probably stay there forever. My wife really feels like the lack of space and the like crowdedness.
Okay, so one wants to sell, one doesn't.
I want to. It's been a long process, so I'm on board now. I feel it too. But I don't know. I have a hard time cleaning my current house, but maybe it's because it's too small and everything is packed all together. So let's say if we're starting off at 2,000 square feet, maybe 2,500. I don't know.
So we'll set up like a criteria for you between 2,000 and 3,000 square feet. And if you want something bigger or okay with something smaller, we'll adjust that as we go. Yeah. And then the most important thing beyond square footage is bedrooms and baths, because those are hard to recreate within a house. So your new house needs to have at least how many bedrooms?
4.
4?
Yeah.
Okay, so if something has 3 bedrooms, you're probably not buying it.
Probably not. Probably not. And I don't know. I feel weird right now because it's kind of like someone might be like, "Oh, he needs 4 bedrooms," or like, but it's just what my situation is, you know. So if we had 3 bedrooms, it'd be tight. My 2 boys would be in a room together, which they would just be like punching each other 24/7. And then we wouldn't have a guest room or like an office space or anything like that. So I think 4 bedrooms would be great.
2,000 to 3,000 square feet. Yeah. At least 4 bedrooms. We'll nail down bedrooms and baths. Mm-hmm. And then the most important, or the baths after that. The next most important thing is like location. Like, where do you want to live?
So school districts play a big factor for us. We're currently happy with the school district for the age that our kids are. But once they get up to a certain age, we're trying to kind of decide where we want to be before my oldest, Hudson, goes to high school. And so we got a couple years to think about it. But so school district is a big one. And then we're trying to find like a balance. So I love living in the city. I love that my favorite taco place is a block and a half, and I can take my kid to Spot Coffee a local coffee shop, like right down the road every Wednesday morning, or whatever. I love it. Like, I just love being in the hustle and bustle. I'm good friends with all my neighbors. My wife, she craves solitude and space and nature. And I appreciate that stuff too. So if we could find a good mixture of the two, like if there's an area that has a village type feel with larger yards, we don't need like 15 acres. We just need a little breathing room. I mean, I gotta pull my cars out to take my garbage out right now. Like, that's how close the things are. If I park too close to one of the house, I open the door and it hits the neighbor's house, you know? So just a little bit of
Put
breathing
that on
room.
record.
What?
It's on record now.
Did I
hit
hit
their house with
yeah.
the car.
They're like, why are these siding things broken?
So walkability is important. Space is important. So
Yeah.
what type of neighborhoods exist in this market that have a good school district, that have some space, but also have that neighborhood vibe
yeah.
and have walkability in a sense? And there are a few markets that come to mind, like East Aurora, if you want to be South
Yep.
Towns.
That's one
Orchard
of the
Park,
top ones for us.
Amherst, Williamsville. Clarence might be, unless you're like right in the meat of Clarence where there is stuff. If it's a neighborhood that's not really established yet because they just started building a bunch of houses there, maybe that's like a Newfane or like a Pendleton or something. It might not have that walkability that you
I don't
desire.
want to live on a farm-ish type feel.
So maybe it's
That's just
Village of
personal.
Williamsville, it's East Aurora, it's OP or Hamburg. But
I want a place that really like that kind of in Western New York specifically. In the Northeast, we have these beautiful forests, and it's like very lush in certain spaces. And so the idea of living in a field is out for me. I want to be in the trees. You know?
okay.
And so I actually really like East Aurora. That's one of my
got a
go-to
great
spots
village.
to talk about.
Great neighborhood, and you
Yeah.
can still get that space and be close by.
Yeah.
So, but figuring this out at the beginning is so important for people so that they make the right decision, because once you close on this house, if you have to resell that house in a short period of time, like that could be a financial drain, especially if you're at like the top of the market, depending on those external market conditions, seller's market, buyer's market, interest rates, desirability to purchase, all of that comes into play too. And that's what a good real estate agent is going to help you understand, because it is my greatest fear that I sell you a house and 2 years down the road, you're like, Nick, this isn't working for whatever reason. Now I got to sell that house for you. And the last position I ever want to be in is, hey, Erik, you paid too much for that house 2 years ago. You're going to lose 50 grand by selling this today. Why don't you continue to be uncomfortable for a few more years until the market rebounds and then we'll sell your house. Like, no one wants to be in that situation as a broker. So it's very important that we understand your motivation at the beginning to make sure that we're putting you in a position to succeed in the long run.
Yeah. And I mean, even for this conversation, I like the role play, but we don't necessarily have to go through the whole process. But this is the kind of conversation you have with an agent.
And it's just a conversation, right? And a good agent's not going to push you to do it. A good agent's going to listen to you, understand what you're saying,
right,
and then help you figure out a game plan to be successful.
And okay, let's just talk about that for a second. If an agent is pushing you to make a decision that you don't want to make, you're not legally bound to like keep working with that person until you're under contract in a house. Like, if you're being pushed and you're feeling pressured by an agent, like, let's go back to episode 1 about vetting an agent, and maybe you need to like start there again. You know,
maybe you have the wrong person.
Yeah, you need somebody who's gonna like protect your interests and care, and who's gonna have a conversation like this. Who's really trying to understand why you're moving, what you need, what are your desires, you know, what are some features that you would like to have but aren't deal breakers. It's just going to be it can be such a fun process to look for a house, you know. And if you're
when
being
you know
pressured,
what you want, though,
right, exactly.
That's when it's fun, is when you and your decision-making unit are on the same page about what you're looking for, the must-haves, the needs, and the wants. We'll get as many of those as possible, as you mentioned at the beginning of the episode. Yeah,
and I mean, once you know what your budget is, and once you have this conversation with your agent, the agent's going to be able to tell you, like, hey, you want 16 bedrooms and a 15-car attached garage, and your budget is $200,000. You know, I mean, that's an extreme example, but you're going to be able to start narrowing down, okay, like, what can I afford, and what of my needs can I afford? I mean, as simple as that.
Some people need to go see a bunch of houses to understand what that is or to get really clear on it.
Yeah.
So that's why when we say like a buyer's agent needs to be like accommodating, needs to have time, needs to be highly responsive, needs to have this sense of urgency to get you into places in a quick period of time.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that you should be looking for when hiring a buyer's agent to help you find a house. Make sure they're responsive, they have the time,
Right.
and they don't mind showing you 15, 20 houses if it takes that many, until you know what you want, right? Because the most important thing about this is that you're happy in that house post-closing, that you understand what, is going to come up from a financial perspective, that the furnace might go in 3 to 4 years and you can afford to replace that furnace or, be on that roof, windows, condition, kitchen, cosmetics, stuff like that.
But, and I think we're actually planning on getting into that a little bit. So if we could like break this down into steps, the first one is why. Why are you moving? The second one, we talked about in episode 2, what's your budget? What can you afford? And then we get into, we talked about before this, we recommend answering all the following questions with a range of dream to enough, right? You don't want to go below enough. You need to be able to be comfortable in your home. You got your dream and you got your enough. And what's the range there and how do you answer these questions? So the first one was, what type of home do you want? Is it a single family? Is it a duplex? Some people, for their first home purchase, they buy a duplex. It's a 2-unit and they're trying to do like the house hacking thing. They want to be able to rent out the other side so that they can cover their mortgage. And it's a great tool to start building wealth and to, save for more real estate ventures or just to upsize later when your family grows.
So how long you plan to be in that space is also very important.
Right? So there's townhouses, there's condos, all that stuff. And if you're not familiar, talk to your agent, but figure out like what kind of home do you need? And then how many bedrooms and bathrooms? Like think about how many people you have living with you. Some people, there's 2 people and they need 2 full bathrooms. Right. Some people have like 10 people that live and they're okay with 1 bedroom or 1 bedroom. Wouldn't that be funny? Yeah. 10 people in 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom.
It's like your list of requirements, right?
Right.
And when you don't start with requirements, how can you start to design and engineer your experience about home ownership? Yeah. Requirements are so important.
Yeah. And with bedrooms and bathrooms, I always recommend what's your range, right?
Yeah, we started with that. You need at least how much and at most how much, because there's a lot of nuance to houses in general, right? Mm-hmm. So don't be like too strict about what it is, but be comfortable with the range.
Right. And then the other one that we talked about a little bit was location. What's important to you? Large lot and privacy, or a smaller lot, but you want to be walkable to amenities around the area? Is it a mix of both? Like in my case, it's a mix of both. And what's most important to you? Is it closeness to your new job or closeness to your work wherever you are?
School district, as you mentioned.
School district. Do you want to be close to family? Do you want to be close to parks? Do you need public transportation? These are all things you need to be thinking about. So that plays into the location thing. And then another one that's really important is, what is your threshold for the acceptable condition of the house? And so do you want something that is totally move-in ready? You don't need to do anything. You don't even need to paint. It's like beautiful and ready to go and everything's done. Or are you okay with something that needs a little bit of work, needs a little TLC, whether it's just painting or it's something bigger, Yeah,
a good question to ask is like, hey, if it needs a roof, is that okay?
Right.
Or if it needs a basement wall, is that okay? And then now you could at least establish that baseline where the house needs to be at least mortgageable. I'm okay doing kitchens and baths over time.
Right.
But it has these things. But that post-closing home ownership experience is very important to consider, especially somebody like you who's a family man, 3 kids, dog, wife, and that stuff's extremely important to you, more important than anything else, really.
Yeah.
So what do you want your Saturday and your Sunday to look like with your family? If you want to be able to enjoy that space with them, then maybe you don't buy a house that needs a kitchen and needs a bath, because it's, first of all, always going to be on your mind until it's done. And then second of all, there's a lot of discomfort that comes with renovating a kitchen when you're living in a house with a family of 4 or a family of 5.
Yeah. And that's where it's just so specific to the individual, because there might be someone who has a family and they don't want to spend the time doing the work themselves, but they don't have and they also don't have the finances to pay someone else. So that's just out. Like, oh, I have the know-how to do the work, but I don't have the time to do the work, and I don't have the money to do the work to pay someone else. So you got to think about all that stuff too. Maybe you're a family guy, but maybe you have enough money to pay a contractor to do that stuff for you.
But if you're short on cash, make sure that furnace is good enough. Yeah. Make sure that hot water tank is good enough. Yeah. Make sure the electric upgrades have been sufficient.
Yeah.
Because there are times when stuff comes up in this house that nobody could have caught, no matter how many houses you've sold or how many houses you've inspected, right? Mm-hmm. There's shit happens. So if you're not prepared to handle that stuff post-closing from the time, energy, or money perspective, it could end up crippling your situation. And as we mentioned, that's the last position we want to be in as a confidant in this transaction, where someone's just smoked or overwhelmed at the condition of the home once, they get this key and it's a done deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And just real quickly on that point, just to reiterate, I've had clients who want the move-in ready house, and I've had clients who want the house that needs a ton of work that's been neglected for a while because they want to make it their own. So they work it into the budget. They buy a cheaper house because it needs the work, and they're willing to put the money in later to make it their dream home,
And all this stuff we're talking about comes into valuation, right? All of this subjective stuff works together to have a value, and everyone sees value differently. I see value differently than you. You're going to see value differently than Travis or Drew or Craig. So how people see value is important, right? Because that's price. That's the most important part of this thing to the person on the other side of that purchase, is how much are they receiving for doing the deal with you?
Yeah. 100%. I agree with that. The last thing that we talked about was the resale potential. So sometimes this really matters to someone and sometimes it doesn't. If this is your forever home, right? You're going to move into this house and you're planning on living there forever. The idea of reselling it later and how much you'll get for it later might not mean as much to you as somebody who was buying it as their starter home and is planning on selling and upgrading in a couple of years.
Real estate's very forgiving in the long run, right? Because we live in a country that has inflation, and houses are people's biggest asset. So when this economy relies on inflation, the value of your house is going to go up naturally over time. So in the long run, real estate is a very forgiving investment. It could be very not forgiving in the short run if you make a bad decision, or if you over improve a house, or if you buy at the top of the market, then you get relocated and you're off to Chicago and you just lost 40 grand because the interest rates went up to 7% overnight, or it seems like they went up to 7% overnight.
Yeah.
So how long you're going to be in this house matters a tremendous amount for how much you can pay for it today.
Yeah.
And that is the important stuff that a really good agent is going to help you understand before you close, or before you inspect, or before you apply for your loan or put deposit money down.
Right.
And that's really how to make that search a rewarding experience for the consumer.
Yeah. Now, when you're thinking about all this stuff as a person who's buying, it might feel overwhelming. It might feel like, oh my God, I got to get this perfect before I even step foot in my first house, because that's kind of how we were talking. But there's also a learning process, like you said, as you go. So you try your best to answer these questions. You have a good understanding of why and what you need and what your desires are. You start to learn about the local real estate market and the different locations that are available to you. And you don't have to get 100% right before you start looking at houses, But if you can answer some of these questions truthfully and honestly and transparently to your agent, they're going to be able to understand. They're going to be able to help you find something.
Yeah, and even before to your agent, to yourself, right? To with your spouse, with your children.
Yeah.
What are we doing and why, and what does it need to look like, and how are we going to accomplish it?
Yeah.
It's really like that why, the what, the how. Like when those are in line, as Simon Sinek says it, you have a great connection.
Yeah.
It starts with why.
Yeah.
Then what are we doing? And then how are we executing? And when you can answer all of that together, it will be an amazing experience. And if you hire the right person, it will be financially rewarding.
Yeah. And last thought, it can be a emotional roller coaster. You find something that you think you're going to love because the pictures look great. You show up and it doesn't look great. It looks like, did they even take pictures of this house? Like, how do they make it look so good on the listing? Or you get excited about it and you submit an offer and somebody else offers higher and you lose out on it. It can be an emotional roller coaster, but I guarantee 100% of the time, if you stick with the process, you have a little grit and you continue to look and trust the process. You know, a lot of people believe that everything happens for a reason. And more times than not, clients end up losing out on houses and being very upset. But when they're closing on the house that they decide on, the one that their offer was accepted, a lot of them come back to me and say, I'm so glad we didn't end up with the other ones. I'm so glad it was this one that we found.
And if you're struggling right now with this in whatever regard, it's important to remember that the right things happen at the right time when the right people are involved. And that's like
good.
The saving grace to this. Like, don't rush it. Flow this.
Yeah.
You don't need to think about this all at once. We're going to make sure you think about it at the appropriate times.
Yep.
Just for now, get the pre-approval, set the budget, be okay with the payment, and let's go find exactly what you're looking for, or as close as possible to that.
Yeah. And the next episode, we're going to be talking about offering and contracts. You know, once you find that place and you're ready to go. So, Nick, thanks for having this conversation. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening.